Good evening.
Good evening.
The Twiggs County Board of Education meeting is now called to order. Today is Tuesday, January 14th, 2020, and the time is 6:01 p.m. I've got to get used to that, not saying 19. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance in the moment of silence. Remember Mr. Dixon's family in your thoughts and prayers as his brother was in a car accident. He's had to leave to go see about his brother, so remember that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. You see the agenda for tonight's meeting before you. And just as I said, our superintendent had to leave suddenly to go check on his brother. His brother's been in a car accident. And you see the agenda before you that we have. There will be, then we can make one correction to the agenda before I ask for approval. And that is the personnel, the executive session for personnel. There will be no need for executive session this evening. So it's my suggestion that we cut out the executive session. But with that correction being made, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda for that one correction?
I'll make that motion.
The motion's been made by Ms. Stokes. Is there a second? The second has been made by Ms. Blackshear. Is there any discussion? All in favor for approving tonight's agenda with the exception of excluding the executive session? Please raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. You look, we have minutes for December the 10th and December 16th. December 16th was the called session board meeting. You look over those minutes, and if you are so moved to approve the minutes, either separately or together, please look through those and entertain motions to approve those either separately or together. Yeah, I was looking at that. If you look at item B on the minutes for December the 10th, 2019, JDS principal, and then it says the motion failed, and the motion was made and seconded. I need to go back anybody have any other recollection about that?
I mean,
How that went?
I'm just confused on what not recording. It was a yes or no?
When it says the motion. Oh, well, the motion. Yeah.
I've seen that before, not recorded, but not in the instance of a failed motion.
Mm-hmm. So that be, we need to ask about that and bring that back the next time. I can't remember what happened there, and I was wondering if anybody else had a recollection about that.
If Ms. Tina can provide us with the IEP, or our executive session agenda, we can see what the IED was as a name, and that may jog our memory, but,
Another thing that we can do is just not, if you don't feel moved to make the motion to approve these minutes, if you wanna look over the other minutes, and let's bring these back the next time for the correction, because I can't.
well, depending on what the IED is on this one, because Shay is principal, it'll determine what his agenda will look like next time also. As in, I don't know what this is.
Right,
So it'll
right,
determine his agenda, but that's complete to your approval.
right.
That was the resignation.
Oh, that was for the resignation. Oh, that's right,
Mhm.
okay. Okay. That was a resignation.
Either way, why would the vote not be recorded versus the vote, the way we voted?
There's nobody voted.
Nobody voted, so that would be a no, that was counted as a no. It's not that nobody voted at all, so there was no yes or no no. I remember that name. I remember just
I
not
remember
having a
also.
vote.
I just don't know if we can phrase it as vote not recorded.
Nobody voted.
It would just be like a unanimous
Mhm.
vote, as in no, because it failed.
But a motion was made.
But a motion was made, so it could not be a vote not recorded.
My suggestion is to, let's table this, well, there's no need to table this, but let's, if you do not feel moved to accept this one, to approve this one, would you like to look over December the 16th and approve that one? Or make the motion to approve that one, and let's, see if we have a recollection about that, and ask questions about that for the next time. Ma'am.
The software will allow us to do, abstain. If we don't register a yes or no vote, we can click abstain from voting.
Oh, and just make
Yeah,
it an
but the software,
abstain.
if we don't enter a vote, it will just record it as not recorded. So,
And it records it as a not recorded?
yeah, no vote recorded, so if there's no vote on it. But we can select abstain for everybody since no one voted.
It wouldn't be an abstention, so
Right.
that would be out of order also.
Okay.
I just can't remember what, I have to go back and look at what happened on that.
The motion failed unanimously. But I think the question on the table is, can we, is that considered a no vote?
Right.
It looks as if we didn't vote.
If it failed, you can't vote on it.
The motion failed. That makes
The
sense.
motion didn't fail if it was made and seconded, then there was no failed motion, is that correct?
Absolutely,
If
so
there
the
was no
motion
failed
did
motion.
fall,
Take.
absolutely.
So there was just no votes on it, it was just,
So I guess that's the only way we can.
So you're saying that, it says that I made that motion, right?
that's what it
So
says.
you're saying I made it, and me, know what I mean, if I made that motion, I'm gonna vote on the motion I made, I wouldn't make a motion if I'm not gonna vote on it.
Mhm.
What I would like to do is go back and look at it and see what happened before we, and let's get clarification
And
as to
we'll listen to
exactly
the
what,
recordings as
and
well.
listen to the recordings as well.
Yeah.
And not, and I would not entertain a motion to approve these minutes until next time, until we go back and look at the recording as well and find out. Because we have recordings, we can find out exactly what happened.
You won't make a motion at all to accept this?
I would not,
You
I would
have
not entertain a motion, but now the board can do at their pleasure.
You'll have to make an amendment to your agenda, because it's listed on the agenda as an acceptance to the minutes from, this meeting.
Say that again.
You have to make an amendment to your agenda.
I would just say there was no motion. If there's no motion to vote, there's not an amendment, there's just no motion. There was no motion made for December the 10th minutes. They were on the agenda, but there was just no motion made. If you choose not to make a motion,
I think,
so you don't need to change the agenda.
so if you're not gonna change the agenda, then we just have to motion to not accept it and not accept the minutes, because it's on the agenda.
Do you wanna make the motion to table the minutes until the next time?
We can do that.
Okay, that'll be fine. You'd like to do that?
Madam Chair, I motion that we table the minutes from board meeting,
Listen,
what's the date on this? December 10th, and would you like me to accept it on for 16th?
if you feel so moved, yes, sir.
All right, Madam Chair, I motion that we, table the minutes for the December 16th meeting and accept the minutes as presented for the December 10th meeting. I did it backwards. Madam Chair, I move that we accept the minutes for December 10th. Where are they? How about that? What's the difference?
Those are the 10s and those are the 16s.
Gotcha.
So we're gonna accept the 16th.
Alright. Madam Chair,
Mhm.
I motion that we accept the minutes for December 16th, 2019, BOE call session, and table minutes presented before us for December 10th, 2019, BOE regular session.
Okay, you've heard, Mr. Harris's motion to approve the minutes for December the 16th, 2019, and table the minutes for December 12th, 2019. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Blackshear. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. That motion passes unanimously, carries unanimously. Okay, at this time, we're gonna ask Ms. Blackshear, for our ethics statement, please, ma'am.
In accordance with regulations set forth by the Georgia Ethics Commission, it is the duty of every board member to avoid both conflict of interest and interest of such conflict. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest? Madam Chair, we will proceed with our agenda.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blackshear. And it's my understanding that no one has signed up or come for public participation. So with that, we're gonna move on with our superintendent's comments and announcements. Mr. Bacon, do you have any announcements?
Well, as we all know, the superintendent had to be out to deal with a family matter, and I am stepping in for the superintendent this evening. As we all know, the schools were closed, had to have an emergency dismissal today because of the water issue. That issue has been taken care of, but we're on the water advisory from the health department, and because of that, all activities for the remainder of the day and tomorrow for students will be closed. Teachers and staff will report tomorrow to work, and students will not. And hopefully, the advisory will be lifted and everybody will be back to work on Thursday. Once water is tested and everything is back on, so, that is it, Madam Chair.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mr. Bacon, for that. And with that being said, we're going to move on to our business agenda. And the first item on our business agenda is the TODY, the Teacher of the Year Banquet, and this is an information item.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, board members, and community, on the 23rd, next Thursday, we will have our Teacher of the Year Banquet, and to honor all of those, the teachers of the year, and crown our district teacher of the year. Next Thursday at, what time is it?
6 p.m.
at 6 p.m. So if they can make it out, it's on the website, and anybody, invitations, and please attend.
All right, thank you. Is that all the announcements, Mr. Baker?
Yes, that's the,
Okay,
for teacher.
all right, that's all the announcements, that we have, for the superintendent's comments and oh, excuse me, Teacher of the Year banquet, I'm sorry, let me get where I'm supposed to be. Our next item on the business agenda is item B, and that is, L4G, the literacy grant review, and Ms. Reardon's gonna give us some information regarding that.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, Board members, Assistant Superintendent Bacon, and stakeholders. This evening I'm presenting to you on the L4GA grant. It came open and we are intending to apply for it. We submitted our intent to apply. And as you'll see in the packet that I gave to you, that the state was awarded from federal funds, $35,812,394 for each year for 5 years. And as you see, that is the most that was awarded to any state in the United States. So we were really excited about that. The closest to them was the Louisiana Department of Education, and they were $15 million less than we are. So that's what we are applying for, is a portion of that money. The goal of the L4GA grant, which is Literacy for Georgia, is what the L4GA stands for. The goal of Georgia's plan is to improve literacy outcomes across all ranges within a feeder system, which is early childhood, elementary, middle, and high schools by 3% annually. In order to apply for this, you must have a feeder program that you apply as a whole, and it's birth through 12th grade. So we are submitting for the things that we did with our vitamin R&L grant, kind of plays into this. And then from there, we've got our pre-K plus our elementary, our middle, and our high school. So it's gonna cover all of our children in the district, those in school and not in school yet. The project outcomes, this is what they expect to gain out of this, is literacy across all grade levels and content areas. So this is not just for ELA. A lot of times when we talk about literacy, we're thinking ELA. This is for all content areas: math, science, social studies, and again, birth through 12th grade. It is looking to provide professional capacity for our teachers, our new teachers, our future teachers, those teachers we don't even have yet, that we'll include them in the plan. Our experienced teachers, our para-pros are a big part of what we can do with this grant. Another outcome of this grant is improving instructional quality, and we're talking about instructional quality at the Tier 1 level, which is all students. That's not the students that get specialized instruction of any kind. It's not just those, it's all of our students. It also includes, in the outcomes, they expect to have community participation, which what looks good for us is a lot of the things that we did with the Vitamin R&L grant, because we were able to, over that 2-year period, bring in a lot of community support in through that grant into our school system. And we are still working on that, because we have some presentations that will be happening next week through that Vitamin R&L grant with our Read Aloud libraries, doing some presentations with that out in the community. And then next outcome is school and school climate. They're looking to have improved school climate, because we improve the literacy, you improve education, you improve the school climate. And then the last thing is systemic policies at the state level, meaning that what we're doing is aligned to state policies, but what we are applying for, as they look at all of the grants that are being presented, the grant proposals, then, right now we're in they're in session, and so they're looking to create policies and move forward with some of those. And this is going to influence some of those policies, the things that we present, that what are our needs, what are our desires, not just with us, but all the districts that apply. In order to get this, they're looking for evidence-based practices in what we submit. In the L4GA partnerships that apply for these grants, we have to have research-based, they have to be data-informed, it has to be responsive to our community, and it has to professionalize our educators. If we don't include those things, they won't look at what our proposal is. The next thing is talking about the focus of the L4GA grant, that our plans align in the areas that are in the center. The L4GA grant, our district strategic plan, our comprehensive needs assessment, all of those things will align as we apply for the grant. They're already aligned. And the circles that you see around that, those are the areas in which we are aligning everything. That to ensure that the goals of the grant, our needs assessment, and our strategic plan all align, and these areas are all focused in all three of these areas. So here's the important question. So how much is it for Twigs? That's what we're looking for. This is one of the frequently asked questions of everybody across the state. This is their answer. Consider the number of students being served by the system from birth through grade 12. Assume that an award would generally provide about $300 to $500 per student. This is a rough estimate, and the total amount awarded would be dependent on our local plan. What exactly do we want to do with this grant? Any federal earmarks that they may or may not have coming in and that we may or may not already have, and available funds at the time as they disperse to all of the people who are applying. If they are awarded it, how those funds get spread out across those. And finally, what is the timeline for the grant? Like I said, I went to the first time we even heard about what was going on was December the 4th. And then I went to the first general session on that. Then I immediately came back and met with the literacy team at the high school. December the 5th. On the 9th, I met with JES, and we began working. We submitted our letter of intent for applying for the grant December the 20th. That was when it was due. And then we began working to, I had to work over the break to gain access to the fluid review, and we finally got that by December the 31st. Then from that, we've had more literacy team meetings at the elementary school, at the high school. We had a conference call earlier on Friday. We had a conference call with the Georgia Department of Education concerning the grant and some things that they were putting together for us to help us apply for the grant, because they really want to see us get this grant. So they're coming on board to help us out. I had another literacy team meeting on yesterday with the elementary school, and then the rest of these are my goals, what I plan to have put in place, because we have to submit the grant on the 31st. It's actually due the next week, but we will be out of the district on when it's due, so I want it turned in prior to us going out of the district on that following week. So this is I put the goal for submitting for myself ahead of when it's actually due, so that we will have that. Any questions?
Yes, Ms. Reardon, how do we, as a system, and I see you have that as one of your checkpoints of one of the things to do, how do we identify students from birth through pre-K or to pre-K of this?
How do we go out into the district and
How do
apply?
we identify those people, the birth to pre-K?
There's lots of data that's out there. We look at birth records within the district. We look, we're talking with the health department. We're talking with, a lot of it's statistical data. We go out and find those children. We have people that are going out and finding. We look for brothers and sisters of the students that we already have. And then as we're in the churches and we're, out in the community, then we're trying to gather up, who is our clientele for the future? Who are those birthed through 5-year-olds? Another thing that we're looking to do is putting some things in the plan to be able to identify and reach those people, such as meeting with the health department, Dr. Callen's office, because she's an OBGYN over at Community Health.
Okay.
So she's got clients that are coming in here from Twigs as well, talking with the hospitals when babies are born, that we want to make contact with those families, provide support for the family, the mom, the dad, the grandparents, and then provide some literature in the home, like we did through the Vitamin R&L grant, except reaching below the 2 and 3-year-olds and go down to birth.
Okay. And then what is fluid review?
The fluid review is what you submit this to, and then through the fluid review,
Oh, is
then
it-
that's how they score it.
Okay.
And that's where we find out, what we did right, what we did wrong. Did we get 10 points out of 10, or did we get 9 out of 10, and why?
It's a platform, I guess is what it's called,
Yes.
that you do to submit the information.
Right.
Okay. And let me make sure.
And what I was gaining access to was what we had submitted in the past, so that we don't,
Oh, okay.
we don't duplicate. We need to branch out.
So do you know when we find out about this?
Whether or not you have received it, it is
Yes.
not until May.
Okay.
So once we submit it, at the end of January, once it's submitted, then it goes into a review process.
Okay.
Like I said, we have to include a plan for the elementary school, for the middle school and the high school, separate plans, but they can all be the same plan. And us being such a small district, we can submit the same plan, but there will be a different reviewer for each school. So that's what the letter of intent was for. The letter of intent was so that they could hire the reviewers. They knew
Okay.
that this district is going to be applying, so we need to hire a reviewer for this district.
Okay.
Or, do we have 10 districts or 20 districts?
Okay.
Do they do anything for the little ones that's at the, by the pond at the schools?
Yes,
Yeah,
we
Head Start,
have
they
to,
partner.
we're gonna pull in the Head Start program. It's up to us.
Yes.
It's not a matter of, whether or not the grant will do it. It's up to us and how we put it into the plan. And if we put it into the plan, then yes. And so we have planned to include them in this.
And Miss Flowers' little crew.
Yes.
Cause we hoping that they'll come to us.
Yes, because the data that we looked at on that phone call on Friday, that included both of those two entities. They were talking to us about those and making sure that, we are aware that they exist, which we were aware that they existed, and that we will include that. Because again, you were asking, where do we get our birth through 5-year-olds?
That's another place.
That's another place where they start trickling into
Right.
the system, so to speak.
Right.
There.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Reed.
You're welcome.
That's very exciting news.
Thanks for working on that.
Yeah, we'll have fingers crossed for that. Okay, let's see, that was item C is beating the odds analysis, and this is an information item.
What you have in your packet is a sheet that looks like this. It's kind of small, and you probably have to squint to look at it. This is a very interesting piece of data. It's a subset of data that comes from RCC RPI scores. And what it does, it takes a school system's socioeconomic, prison, hospital, economic growth predictors, and what it says is, hey, it takes the money that's being spent on instruction and says, hey, here's all the things that affect you or help you, and here's how well you should be doing. So every county is ranked this way, and I want to kind of give you an example of how there's 3 scores you can get. You can get a score of within, which is in the middle, within expectation, beating the odds, or below expectation. So you have a school like Rosemont Elementary, with 83.4, and if we just see that by itself alone, we'll be like, wow, that's great. But obviously, it says within expectations. So obviously, that school district or that area is putting in more resources, and this school should be generating more performance based. Their performance should be greater. So it gives you that, what am I supposed to expect for the inputs that are out there in that community? And sometimes we don't really, we see that bottom line score, we see that 50, we see that 40, we see that 90, and we make that judgment. But as you look at Twiggs County, you see our middle, elementary, and high school, we're within expected range, which is right in the middle. It's not where we want to be, obviously. We would like to beat the odds. And it's on the borderline. And yes, we would definitely like our CCRPI score to be above where they are now. But what they're saying is, for the inputs, the social factors, the financial factors that are in our community, our students are within the expectations of whatever algorithm that they are using, which is very good. Because some of the social, I had a conversation with somebody this morning about one of our kids were getting out of the car, coming into the elementary school. And not just the school didn't have water, but homes didn't have water. And so, kid got out of, they had an issue, but they came to school with that issue. So we have to meet them where they are and be the best situation and make the situation good, even though they came to us, whether they brush their teeth, wash their face, and not judge that kid and make that day well and still have a good day of learning for that kid. So we're really happy that we're within expectations. How do we push forward? And so I think if you get a chance, look at some of the other counties around us, and you'll be surprised that while their scores are high, they're not within expectations of the input and money being spent within the district. So, well, as I said, this is a subset of the CCRPI, but it takes in all those other factors that sometimes we forget when we're looking at the raw data, Madam Chair.
Any questions about that?
I would like to just add, I know we retained a lot of teachers, and we did have some improvement in our CCRPI. But since we had a great retention, I'm hoping that we will exceed the state level this time, with our results. Because we got a lot of teachers that's still here, and they did good last year. I'm looking for better results.
So
All right, and this is online. It
Yep.
is on the governor. You could probably Google GOSA
Yes,
and
on the-
find that beating the odd to see all the counties in Georgia as well, and with that online. All right, thank you for that, Mr. Bacon. And then our next item is item D. This is an action item, and this is the approval of seeking approval for board meeting calendar. The board meeting calendar. Let's see.
as told by the superintendent, the meeting days have remained the same, the days have remained the same, as last year. That's all I really know about that. As far as
I like this I like this graphic, because on the right-hand side, it does have a few events here, kind of how they coincide in with the meeting, so that's really good. And is this online, or if it's approved, it can be made online for the public? Okay. All right, you see our board meeting, calendar before you. Is there a motion to approve our board meeting calendar as presented?
Madam Chair, I motion that we approve our board meeting calendar for the 2020 year.
Okay, there's our motion from Mr. Harris. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Stokes. Is there any discussion? discussion? Further discussion? Okay. All in favor for approving our board meeting calendar for 2020, please raise your hands. That motion carries unanimously. All right, and then our next item will be item E, and this is our board training schedule. This is an action item. Do you have any? Do you have anything for that?
Ms. Tina, on the board training calendar?
Mr. Dixon said just to think about, presenters and dates for board retreats.
Yes.
Anything, anybody, just off the top of your head, I know we have thought about listening to anything, anybody? Or you wanna think about that and bring it back the next time?
So dates, topics, and presenters. That the board would be the board's pleasure. So it was on that action.
Dates, topics, and presenters. Since this is an action item on our agenda, I would, recommend someone making a motion for our board to table this until next time and think about dates, topics, and presenters and be able to have something more concrete than next time. But, as the board, of course, you can motion and vote and, do anything you choose.
I'll move that motion to table.
The motion has been made by Ms. Blackshear. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor for tabling this, training schedule until next meeting, please raise your hand. Okay, that motion carries unanimously. I'll let Mr. Dixon know some ideas that we have. All right, our next item is the election of our board vice chair, and, in the past, since I've been on, this is an action item this evening, in the past, there's been years that we haven't done this every year, but I think customarily it is something that can be done every year, and, is there a motion or feeling from the board about this, or any ideas that you have about our vice chair?
I'll make a motion, we leave it like it is, Mr.
All right. Ms. Sykes has made the motion to keep our vice chair for the next year.
A second.
Second has been made by Ms. Blackshear. Is there any discussion? Mr. Rouse, would you accept that if,
Yes.
and Mr. Rouse said he would accept that. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. That motion carries with 4, and, Mr. Rouse, you abstain from
Yeah.
that? Yes, okay, that's good, that motion carries. Thank you for your service, thank you for all of your service, for everybody. And then the next item is our budget calendar. This is an action item. Mr. Austin.
Good evening, board chair, vice chair, Mr. Bacon, board members. So around this time every year, we try to look at our budget calendar to ensure that, you all have a copy of this, I think.
Yes, but, oh, he's making it bigger.
Okay.
Read our minds.
So every year we try to visit our budget calendar, and this year the goal was to make it more inclusive, for our stakeholders to see more information as related, to our budget process, and also give you all as a board more time to review some of the more pertinent information, such as reviewing the salary, schedules and supplements as well. I know last year some of those things took place in the latter part of the budget development, but this particular calendar is focused on putting this in the beginning. So just going through the regular items or the items that would have any board action or for information items. So that is highlighted for you all's pleasure. And just for everyone's purview and hearing, I will go through line by line to give an understanding of what we're trying to accomplish here. So last night, we had a presentation for County Exchange about what we do in Twiggs County Public Schools from a financial standpoint. We covered nutrition department, we covered our budget process, some audit material, and also had a federal programs presentation. The exchange, Fort County Exchange, was very well impressed by our status and the things that we're doing. And so it was a good engagement for our stakeholders to kind of hear firsthand about how we handle our finances. And so tonight, of course, is the presentation of the budget calendar and seeking board approval. Afterwards, on the 20th, these are the items that we do more in-house. Some of the things that we'll look at for as preparing some of the budget development procedures and reports and ensuring that we have a clear plan of action going forward. On the 28th, which is a key item, this will be the presentation of all the salary schedules and supplements. And note, it's just a presentation. We're not seeking any board action. We want to just ensure that you have ample enough time to review and provide any recommendations if needed. Friday the 31st of January, we'll provide all of the department heads and school administration with a budget template. This allows them to look at what they had the prior budget year, and if any adjustments need to be made, or there are any unexpected changes that they've seen within this current budget, it gives the opportunity to talk about those things. So again, this is internal stakeholders providing more clarity to the budget process. Tuesday, on the February 4th, we would like to have a stakeholder engagement session, more like, I guess, a town hall meeting, if you will, at the JES school to serve this particular community of Jeffersonville in order to ensure that we provide information and have a different form in order for us to get those inputs as it relates to our budget process and finances. I want to pause here just in case you have any questions or concerns.
As we work through this budget process, Mr. Austin,
Yes.
I just have a question about our directors. We have department heads. We have teaching and learning, Title I. And I know the Title I budget is pretty much what it is, and you have to spend it on what you have.
Yes, ma'am.
We have the technology directors, we have the athletic, we have other directors, we have each school. How much input do they have in requesting, suggesting the budget, and then after the money has been, it's not allocated, but after it's been apportioned, however it's been done, how much do they have any autonomy in the budget in their decision? So that's just the question I'm asking as we work through this
Sure.
process with you.
So they in the past they have had a lot of flexibility in making some suggestions. The department heads would be more the, I guess, executive, CFO, assistant superintendents at that time. Then of course all the departments that they have underneath them. So they'll provide some information on some things that they'll probably want to see. And as we get into our administrative sessions, we take those things into consideration as well. Because I do believe it's hard for me to say this is the money you're going to spend if it's not designed to do the things that you need to do.
Exactly.
And if we have any incident that's come up, what we call emergencies, right? And there are certain maintenance requirements or certain type of materials that be bought, that gives us an opportunity to have some risk management in that piece. So that's a very important part, and we're gonna see a lot of that within this calendar.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Because if we have, we have directors, we want to entrust our leaders, our school leaders in those things, then they need to have a little bit of autonomy.
Yes, ma'am. I do agree. Yes, ma'am.
All right.
And if I could tag on to that question, great question, Ms. Rainey. In reference to their input, are they eligible to present to you a budget that they would like to have?
Yes, the budget template on the 31st, that's something that we'll provide the department head of school administration. And this is the opportunity for them to actually say, hey, these are some things that I seen last year that I may want to increase, may want to decrease, want to re-strategize. So this will be our working document.
So every department head, such as AD, Director of Technology, they can submit to you the budget that they need to work their program.
Yes.
All right. is it possible, as we are a working board, to see in our development of a budget what they asked for
Yes, sir.
versus what they were granted?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That is the purpose, so we have complete transparency in this process, so, that's the goal.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions, concerns before we move past the 4th of February?
That's,
Okay.
that's, it must be made,
All right, so, the third to pretty much the month of February, we're reviewing the personnel allotment. So as you all know, the QBE, our state funding, is based upon how many teachers we earn, how many students we have. So we're able to, do those particular things in the month of February. Just looking at personnel, ensuring that our administrators are involved, and make sure they have the adequate staffing in place to educate the boys and girls of Twiggs County. So as we move forward, going back to your point, Mr. Harris, on the 2nd, the budget documents for recommendation will be submitted to the office on March 2nd. So at that particular time, we will have that information on what people would like to see and some of the things they'll suggest, and we'll have some actual documentation behind that. The third, so the other stakeholder engagement session and input on budget process will be in the Dry Branch area. Tentatively it's set for the Dry Branch Resource Center at noon. We do understand that's the furthest part, one of the furthest part of our district. We want to have it earlier for traveling sake. So, but we'll get more information about location and time as that day approaches. But tentatively, that's what we're looking at to serve that community of Twiggs County. And of course, the 2 red items. So on the 10th, this will be the recommendations from the board about the salary schedule supplements. So at this time, it's about a 4 to 5 day review period we'll have in order to give us what we need in the budget and finance department information about the salary scales and supplements. So if there's any tweaks or changes that needs to be made, this will be the time we'll go back and review that and make those adjustments for the pleasure of what the board seeks. And then the 2021 budget forecast and information will be presented that following board meeting. And hopefully we'll be able to implement some of the recommendations that you have made at that time. And those are information items. And so the administrative budget sessions, this is the time we're taking all the information from our stakeholders, our department heads, directors, any budget documents, recommendations from the board, and we begin to really dive deep into the budget process and form and begin to try to form a tentative budget. And so we'll meet with the tax commissioner. Buddy does an excellent job of providing information to us. He's been a great support to our district. So I normally like to meet with him and talk about projections. And as we move forward into that, we'll be able to try to start preparing the tentative budget April 21st. And the feedback from the board and the public because last year we'll just bring to you the tentative budget to be approved. This year what we're doing, we're starting a little earlier and presenting the budget and then seeking some feedback and recommendation the following board meeting. So we'll have time for those inputs and questions because I want you to make sure that we all have enough time and information to make the best decision for the boys and girls of Twiggs County. And on the 26th, with the 12th and the 26th, there will be feedback from the board on the budget, tentative budget, and then approval of the advertisement of the tentative budget as we've done in the past. And everything proceeding from that point will be the adoption and the public hearings for the tax digest and the legal adoption of that, which will be sometime in August. And that is a totality of our budget calendar. A lot more in depth this year because we definitely want to ensure that we have a lot more engagement in this process. Are there any questions, concerns, or comments that I can answer this time?
Yes. Mr. Austin, we had some concern with the terminology. If you go back up, Mr. Badger, to our first showing of recommendations, I think it's up a little higher maybe, of salaries, presentation of salary schedules and supplements.
Yes, sir.
In reference to salary schedules and salary scales, as you and I discussed in a previous board meeting, in reference to the difference are them being used in both meanings, but 2 different words. So we were presented in 2019 with a salary schedule and a salary scale. And we wanted to see both terms used because they are two different things.
Okay.
For our understanding, they may be the same in finance books. However, so we could making a slight change to preview presentation of our salary schedules and scales on the 28th, and supplement. Also, my second concern is down a little further at the bottom, going back to the June 23rd date. June 23rd date for the legal adoption of the FY 2021 budget. That fiscal year would start July 1. Right, which gives us less than a week away, which we had an issue with that 2019 adopting the 2020 budget. That's not even a 7 day, so if we didn't agree, yes, these dates above does matter because we can discuss it along the way, but why not adopt that budget on the 9th, which would give us, that second Tuesday of the month, a little bit leeway to discuss anything or concerns that we had, and we can bring it back on the 23rd. Also, why couldn't we push it up to have a full month of adoption of the 2021 budget, and adopt it in May versus adopted in June? But going to the June 23rd, everything above it looks wonderful, and I don't have a hesitation or a question about anything that you implemented. I think those are great implementations of how we receive a real budget. However, I do have concern with waiting till the 23rd to adopt that budget, which we brought attention and concern with 2019.
So you like to see us having a full month of adopting the actual budget, right?
Correct.
And so I would assume that would be the month of May.
That would be fine.
Okay.
Even if we moved up to June, the June 9th date,
Okay.
but we were in a pickle last year,
Okay.
fiscal year 2019 of adopting the 2020 budget, and we felt pressed, and we don't want to feel like that again.
So would you be opposed to moving the 26th, maybe combining to the 12th? Because when we advertise, we just want to have enough time to advertise. Would that suffice?
That's a good board.
Or even if you advertise on the 26th, like you have, and then just have the vote, have the adoption on the 9th, would there be anything wrong with the 9th? Is there any reason why we couldn't make it the second meeting in June? Let me make sure we're having a meeting then, June 9th. Is there any reason?
How many, let's see, how many days is that?
It's the second Tuesday, it's the first board meeting in June. And that would give almost a month, that would still give 1, 2, 3. It would give 3 weeks anyway, to me, that's,
So May 26th.
is there any reason to wait until June the 23rd,
I
Mr.
think that's-
Austin?
No, not at all. Just going from just past, but no, that's a great recommendation. That's something we can definitely do. So I think the 9th can suffice as the
Are
actual.
you okay with that be, is any other thoughts on that? June 9th,
I'm good.
the June 9th?
We'll give it 3 weeks, so that's good time.
What is that? That sounds good, okay. All right, so do you have any other things, do you have anything? Else to just say?
Okay. I think that small change is doable.
And
So it's a recommendation,
of that,
if,
of the approved as presented, okay.
with those changes,
With
and
it,
then,
the only change would be the 9th and then add salaries, schedules and scales.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
we'll make those changes and get those to the board and email. Is tomorrow fine, and we'll adopt it tonight?
Oh, if you wanna make the motion of that, does anybody wanna make a motion to approve that with those changes? Is that so moved to do that? Of adding salary scales and schedule, just to make sure we don't have any question about the set between the salary scales and schedules every time there, and then changing June the 23rd for the legal adoption to June 9th. And I think that would still be okay. I think you just have to give 1 week's notice
Yes,
in
ma'am.
the paper, is
Yes,
that
ma'am.
correct? And that still gives 1 week notice.
Yes, ma'am, it goes for
That actually gives 2 weeks' notice.
Mhm.
It's still in the paper,
Yes, ma'am.
okay?
Go back to the first hearing of the salary schedule and scale.
For the first year. Tuesday, January 28th. That'll be our next meeting.
Yeah, it should be our next meeting.
And then the second one.
You wanna see the second one, sir?
Yes.
March 10th.
March
March
10th.
10th, 45 days later.
Gotcha.
Still time, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, you've heard the presentation. Is there a motion to approve our fiscal year 2021 budget development calendar as presented with the changes, salaries, schedules, and scales, and also changing the legal adoption of the budget to June 9th instead of the 23rd? Is there a motion to approve that?
I'll move that motion.
Second.
The motion has been made by Ms. Blackshear and seconded by Ms. Stokes to approve our 2021 budget development calendar with the exception of adding all salary schedules and scales. And then the legal adoption, moving that to June 9th. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Austin, for working through that with us.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And Mr. Bacon said that he would get us and email that back out to us.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. We have one last item on our business agenda, and that is item H, and that will be our district request. Mr. Bacon, you see that?
Yes, as you see before you, board members, Madam Chair and board members, the field trip and fundraiser as well as property requests, before you for your approval. If there are no questions, we'll seek its silence.
I do have one.
Yes, sir.
Or two. In reference to the May 8th of 2020, please kind of high, senior class Six Flags trip, senior trip. The advisor is known as who? Carrie.
Yeah.
Is Dr. Carrie the only senior advisor, or is she a senior advisor?
I'm not all in on that, but I know she is one of them. She's assistant.
Yeah, so.
Yeah,
Mr.
I know
Holder
there's
and
several.
one other
There's
person.
like, there's several, but I know she's assistant. I think she's the head sponsor of the trip.
Church.
Second question, for the fundraiser, as we still have Gerard listed, he may have been the submitter or the implementer of said fundraiser. However, I don't think it's a good idea to approve this with his name being attached to that fundraiser. And whoever will lead the the team in that fundraiser, the name should be stated, considering he's no longer a district employee.
Then I do agree. What we will do is,
Make the change.
we'll make that change and
We
bring
can
it.
accept,
You can accept it.
accept it, yeah, just I wanna make that.
You wanna make that
Yeah.
change?
Under Dr. Ramsey.
Yes, Dr. Ramsey. Thank you, Ms. Tina. We'll make that change to Dr. Ramsey as being the sponsor. And I think that's all.
One other change.
If you look at the bottom, at the very bottom for facility property request, the person or an organization requesting, if you will change the name to Eric Carswell for Danville Baptist Church there.
Not too much.
So the changes that we have here, on this are changing Mr. Perry's name for the band to Dr. Ramsey. And her, or her designee, she'll designate, and then, changing.
Eric Caldwell and Teresa Blake.
And then Eric Carswell at the bottom.
Only.
So do you, or is there? Is there a motion to approve the request, the district request as presented with the changes, with those changes as presented?
Madam Chair, I make the motion to accept the field trip and fundraiser and property request.
Okay,
Second the motion.
the motion's been made by Ms. Blackshear and seconded by Mr. Harris to approve the district request with the changes discussed. All in favor, or is there any further discussion? Excuse me. All in favor, please raise your hands. That motion carries unanimously, and that ends our business agenda for this evening. I will say that Mr. Dixon did tell me that the principal applications, the opening closed last Friday, and so the applications have come in, so hopefully by the next time we'll have something to be able to present to us. And with that being said, I entertain a motion to, and there will be no, we don't have any recommendations there. So I entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion's been made by Ms. Stokes and seconded by Mr. Rouse to adjourn. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carried unanimously.